I should have known something was wrong when everyone stopped breathing. Not literally, obviously. We were 30, not in a low-budget medical drama. But the second Calvin dropped to one knee in the middle of his birthday party, the room went so quiet I could hear the tiny click of the ring box opening. The ring box I had picked. The flowers behind him. I chose those. The soft gold lights wrapped around the windows. Me. The strawberry cake on the dessert table. Also me, because back in college I got drunk on cheap tequila and announced that if anyone ever proposed to me with strawberry cake nearby, I'd marry them out of respect for taste. Unfortunately, I had not expected that statement to be used in a legal, emotional, and extremely public ambush. Calvin looked up at me, his dark eyes shining in a way that made my knees consider early retirement. "Nico," he breathed, and my brain immediately packed a suitcase and left the country. I glanced behind me. No one. I glanced to the left. Maya was crying into a napkin like she had invested money in this moment. I looked back at Calvin, lowering my voice. "Cal, buddy, you're facing the wrong direction." A shaky laugh moved through the room. Calvin didn't laugh. Not really. His mouth curved, but his eyes stayed locked on mine like I was the only thing keeping him steady. "For once," he murmured, "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." My heart did something stupid. Not romantic stupid. Emergency room stupid. Because this wasn't supposed to be happening. I was the planner, the support character, the best friend standing off to the side, making sure the playlist didn't skip and the champagne didn't run out. I was not the person with Calvin Pierce on one knee in front of me, holding a ring like it had been waiting for my finger all along. He swallowed, thumb brushing the edge of the velvet box. "You once told me if we reached 30 and neither of us was married, we should just marry each other." My lungs forgot their job. That was... My voice cracked, humiliatingly. "That was a joke." "I know." His smile softened, and somehow that was worse. "You were 21, sitting on the floor of my dorm room, eating cold pizza and pretending you weren't crying over Alicia Martinez." I was not crying. I had sauce in my eye. You had heartbreak in both eyes. Rude. Accurate, but rude. Another soft laugh rippled around us, but I couldn't join it. Not when Calvin's hand was trembling. Not when the man who had seen me through every bad haircut, every breakup, every crisis, every 2 a.m. existential spiral was looking at me like the punchline of our youth had become the most serious thing in his life. "I knew you thought it was a joke," Calvin continued, quieter now. "But I didn't." The room blurred at the edges. The gold lights, the white flowers, the song from freshman year humming low through the speakers, the cake, the ring, all the pieces I had arranged for someone else suddenly turned toward me. And I finally understood. 2 weeks earlier, when Calvin sat across from me at our usual coffee shop, tapping his thumb against a sweating glass of cold brew, I had no idea he was about to ruin my life in the most beautiful way possible. Back then, all he said was, "Nico, I need your help with something important." And like an idiot, I said yes before asking what it was. 2 weeks earlier, Calvin looked like a man about to confess to murder. Which, considering he had invited me to our usual Saturday coffee spot and ordered my latte before I arrived, felt possible. Calvin only bought my drink without asking when he was either apologizing or about to make my life harder. "You're wearing a button-down," I noticed, sliding into the booth across from him. At 11 in the morning. On a Saturday. Who died? Calvin glanced down at himself like he'd forgotten clothes existed. No one died. That's exactly what someone says before explaining where they hid the body. The corner of his mouth twitched. There he was. My Calvin. Cold brew in hand. Sleeves rolled to his forearms. Hair a little too perfect for someone who claimed he didn't care about being attractive. Annoying, really. We had been coming to this coffee shop since college. Back when we were broke enough to split one muffin and call it brunch. Same corner booth by the window. Same wobbly table. Same barista, older now, still pretending not to know our orders by heart. Calvin took his coffee black. No sugar. No milk. like a man with no survival instincts. I drank oat milk lattes and complained every single time they tasted like coffee. You could order something else, Calvin reminded me, watching me make my usual offended face after the first sip. And betray tradition? Absolutely not. His smile faded too fast. That was the first sign. Calvin was steady by nature, the kind of guy who could handle flight delays, bad dates, and my mother calling him the handsome one without blinking. But that morning, his thumb kept dragging down the side of his glass, collecting the condensation, wiping it away, then doing it again. I leaned forward. Okay, what's going on? His eyes lifted to mine. For a second, I saw something there. Something soft and terrified and almost too big for the tiny booth between us. Then he looked away. I need your help with something important. I relaxed a little. If this is about your birthday party, I already told Maya no karaoke. I'm not emotionally strong enough to hear Derek sing Adele again. It's not karaoke. Thank God. It's part of the birthday. I narrowed my eyes. Calvin. He took one breath, then another, like he was talking himself off a ledge. I'm going to propose to someone. My entire body paused. Not dramatically. I didn't drop my cup or gasp or clutch my pearls, mostly because I didn't own pearls and also because my nervous system had apparently unplugged itself. You're what? Calvin held my gaze this time. I'm going to propose. At my 30th birthday. A laugh escaped me. Small. Confused. Wrong. Wow. Okay. That's wow. I pointed at him with my coffee lid. You're serious. Very. To a person. His brow lifted. Usually how proposals work. Don't get cute with me. Who? Calvin's fingers tightened around his glass. I want to keep that part a secret until the night. Something in my chest dipped. Just a little. Because Calvin told me everything. Bad dates. Good dates. Weird dreams. Medical scares. The kind of genes that made his butt look too powerful for casual society. And now there was someone important enough to marry. Someone I didn't even know existed. He leaned closer, voice lower. You know me better than anyone, Nico. If anyone can help me make it right, it's you. I should have asked more questions. I should have noticed the way he was looking at me. Instead, because I was an idiot with a loyalty problem, I swallowed the strange ache in my throat and forced a grin. Fine. But if you make me plan the most romantic night of your life, I'm charging emotional damages. Calvin's smile came back slowly. Deal. Then he reached into his jacket and slid a small black notebook across the table. My name was already written on the first page. My name on the first page should have been a red flag. For one stupid second, my heart did something embarrassing. Not hope. Absolutely not hope. Just a small, violent kick against my ribs, like some reckless part of me had looked at those 4 letters and thought, what if? Then I shut it down so fast I nearly got emotional whiplash. Calvin had labeled things like that before. In college, he once made a spreadsheet titled Nico Emergency Protocol, after I got dumped during finals and tried to cut my own bangs at 2 a.m. He knew I liked structure. He knew I liked being useful. He knew that if my name was on a project, I would treat it like a sacred legal obligation with tabs. Besides, Calvin had never looked at me like that. Not really. Not in the way people looked at someone they wanted to marry. So when I opened the notebook and saw Nico written in Calvin's neat block letters, I forced my pulse to calm down and frowned like a normal person. Why does this look like evidence? Calvin reached for his coffee, but his mouth curved against the rim. Because you like structure. I like snacks and emotional avoidance. Don't misrepresent me. The first few pages were blank except for little headers. Venue, music, flowers, food, speech, ring. Calvin had underlined ring twice, which made my stomach do a weird little drop. I tapped the page. You already bought it? Not yet. Good. Because I refuse to let you propose with something ugly. I have standards, and apparently now they apply to your mystery spouse. His thumb stilled on the cup. Mystery spouse. The words landed between us with a strange weight, but Calvin only nodded. That's why I need you. It was unfair, honestly. Calvin knew exactly how to say things that made me fold like cheap laundry. He didn't beg. He didn't dramatize. He just looked at me with those steady brown eyes and made me feel like the only person in the world who could help him. Which was manipulative. Probably. Emotionally efficient at minimum. I leaned back, pretending to consider it like I had options. Let me understand. You want me, a single bisexual disaster with 2 failed relationships this year alone, to plan a proposal for someone you refuse to name. 1 failed relationship, Calvin corrected. Trevor counted as 2. He had the personality of a couple going through divorce. That got a laugh out of him. Small, warm, familiar. The kind that had lived in my chest for years without paying rent. I hated that it made me feel better. Why me? The question came out softer than I meant. Calvin looked down at the notebook. His knuckles brushed the edge of the page, careful, almost nervous. Because you know what matters to me. There it was again. That strange ache under my ribs. I should have felt honored. I did feel honored. Mostly. But somewhere beneath that was something uglier. Something small and embarrassed and childish. If I knew what mattered to him so well, why hadn't I known there was someone he wanted to marry? I pushed the thought away before it could become a real feeling. Fine. I grabbed the pen tucked into the notebook spine. But I have rules. Calvin's eyes lifted. Of course you do. 1, no flash mobs. I don't care how much you love this person. Nobody deserves organized public clapping. Agreed. 2, no hiding rings in food. People choke. Calvin. Wasn't planning to. 3, if you cry, do it handsomely. Your birthday party has a photographer. His smile softened in a way that made me look down too fast. Noted. I wrote "No flash mobs" in aggressive capital letters. For the next hour, we built the skeleton of a proposal. Small guest list. Warm lighting. Nothing too public. Something intimate but not suffocating. Romantic, but not like a perfume commercial where everyone looks damp and confused. Calvin mostly listened. He let me ramble about flowers and playlists and whether 30 counted as grown-up enough for champagne towers. Every now and then, he added one quiet detail. Gold lights, he murmured once. Not white. I blinked. Because I hate white lights? His eyes flickered to me. Because they make everything feel like a dentist's office. Exactly. Finally, someone respects trauma. He smiled into his coffee. By the time we left, the notebook was half full, my latte was cold, and Calvin looked lighter than he had all morning. At the door, he touched my elbow. Nico. I turned. For 1 second, he looked like he wanted to say something that might split the day open. Then his hand fell away. Thank you. I shoved the notebook against my chest and grinned like nothing in me had shifted. Don't thank me yet. I'm about to make your proposal disgustingly perfect. Calvin watched me with an expression I couldn't read. Yeah, he whispered. That's what I'm counting on. I walked home thinking about flowers, lighting, music, and some faceless person lucky enough to be loved by Calvin. Halfway home, a terrible thought caught up with me. Gold lights because I hated white ones. Small room because I hated public scenes. No flash mobs because I had once threatened to leave a restaurant during a birthday chant. For one breath, the idea stood in front of me, bright and impossible. Then I laughed out loud on the sidewalk like a man trying to scare away a ghost. Calvin was thoughtful. That was all. He had been translating my taste into something useful because I was the person helping him plan. That didn't make me the person at the center of it. It made me convenient. And honestly, that hurt enough to feel believable. So I kept walking and told myself I didn't notice that every idea I had written down looked suspiciously like something I would have wanted for myself. By Monday morning, I had become a man with a mission. A stupid, romantic, unpaid mission. My kitchen table disappeared under sticky notes, flower samples, and the black notebook Calvin had given me. I had tabs, a backup playlist, and a spreadsheet named Operation Don't Embarrass Calvin, which felt generous considering he had emotionally drop-kicked me into wedding-adjacent labor with zero warning. Maya came over with iced coffee and the face of a woman who knew too much. "You're really doing this?" I stuck a gold star beside the word lighting. "Of course I'm doing this," Calvin asked. "That's not a reason. That's a medical condition." "Correct. Terminal best friendship." She leaned over my notes. "White flowers. Soft white. Warm. Clean. Calm." Aha. What? Nothing. I hated nothing. Nothing from Maya always meant something with teeth. Calvin wanted the proposal to feel like coming home. That was the only direction he'd given me, which was both beautiful and deeply unhelpful. Home could mean anything. A cabin, kitchen, person, a couch you trusted enough to fall asleep on with your mouth open. Not that I was thinking about Calvin's couch. Or Calvin's mouth. Absolutely not. I chose white garden roses because Calvin once said they made a room feel less afraid. I picked gold string lights because overhead white lights made me feel like I was about to get a cavity filled. For music, I tried to build something romantic but not cheesy, emotional but not the kind where a man in a hat whispers over a guitar like he's apologizing to a farm. Then I found it. The song from freshman year. The one Calvin and I played during a blackout in our dorm building, when everyone else was screaming in the hallway and we sat on the floor between our rooms eating vending machine cookies. Calvin had used his phone speaker. I had made fun of his taste. Then we'd listened to the song 3 times anyway, shoulder to shoulder in the dark. I added it before I could overthink. Then came dessert. Calvin texted, "Any cake ideas?" I stared at the message too long. Me, strawberry. Obviously. Calvin, obviously. Me, it's romantic. Also, if someone proposes near strawberry cake, that person is legally required to say yes. I don't make the laws. The typing bubble appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Calvin, good to know. Something about that made my face warm, which was ridiculous. It was cake. Cake did not flirt. Cake was dairy and sugar with structural ambition. By Wednesday, I had built an entire proposal that felt weirdly personal. Not to Calvin. To me. A small room. Warm light. The old song. Strawberry cake. No flash mobs. No public pressure. Just memory, softness, and enough privacy to cry without going viral. Maya looked at the final mood board and went very still. I frowned. What? For one stupid second, my brain tried to hand me an answer. Not a logical answer. A selfish one. The kind lonely people invented when someone was kind to them for too long. I looked at the board again, at all that warmth and memory and softness, and my chest did that dangerous little lift. Then I crushed it. Calvin had said someone. Not you. Someone. He knew my taste because 12 years of friendship came with side effects. He knew my favorite cake for the same reason he knew my coffee order, my worst ex's name, and which hoodie I stole when I was sad. Knowing me was not the same as choosing me. So I shoved the thought into a mental drawer, locked it, and set the drawer on fire. Maya watched my face do whatever embarrassing thing it was doing. You really don't see it? I frowned harder. See what? Her mouth opened, then closed. For once in her life, Maya chose mercy. Nothing. It's beautiful. That should have comforted me. Instead, later that night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at everything I had chosen for someone Calvin loved. And for one reckless second, I wished that someone hated strawberry cake. By Thursday, I had invented several possible identities for Calvin's mystery person. Daniel from his office, who wore slim-fit suits and used words like synergy without apologizing. Harper, his ex-girlfriend from grad school, who had perfect teeth and the calm confidence of someone who did yoga on purpose. Some man from a dating app named Oliver, probably, because men named Oliver always looked like they owned expensive candles. Or someone kind, stable, gorgeous, and allergic to chaos. I hated all of them, which was unfair, since most of them were imaginary and the rest had probably never committed a crime against my emotional stability. Still, by noon, I had searched Calvin's Instagram followers like a criminal with Wi-Fi and no dignity. Every attractive person became a suspect. Every heart emoji became evidence. The worst part was that I wasn't even looking for proof. I was looking for someone to blame for the fact that Calvin's future suddenly had a door I didn't have a key to. This was normal best friend behavior. Probably. Maya found me at my desk, glaring at a woman named Priya who had commented, "Looking sharp," under Calvin's birthday post from last year. "You look insane." "I'm doing research." "You're zoomed in on a stranger's sunglasses. She might be reflected in them." Maya slowly took my phone away. "Nico." "What?" "You're spiraling." "I am not spiraling. I am calmly investigating the future spouse of my closest friend, so I can ensure the proposal matches their vibe." "Aha! And what's their vibe?" I slumped back in my chair. "Being better than me, apparently." Her expression softened too fast, which made me want to crawl under the desk and become office equipment. I reached for my phone again. "Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you're about to say something emotionally accurate." Maya held the phone out of reach. "Maybe you're not ready for Calvin to belong to someone else." My chest tightened. "That's dramatic. He's not a library book." "No, but he has been your person for 12 years. I hated that phrase, my person, because it was true in a way I had never needed to examine. Calvin was the first call after bad news. The emergency contact I never changed. The spare key under my plant. The sweatshirt in my closet that technically belonged to him but had emotionally naturalized as mine. But marriage changed things. After marriage, someone else would get the first call. Someone else would know what he ate for dinner. Someone else would wake up beside him, steal his blankets, hear that low morning voice before coffee. My stomach turned. "I'm happy for him," I muttered. Maya's eyes stayed gentle. "I know. I am. I know. Stop agreeing like I'm dying." She gave my phone back. "Then stop looking like you're attending the funeral of your own emotional stability." Rude. Accurate, but rude. That night, Calvin called while I was testing the playlist. His name lit up my screen, and my mood lifted before I could stop it. "Hey!" I tried to sound casual and not like a man who had just stalked half of Manhattan. "Hey!" Calvin's voice came warm through the speaker. "How's the planning?" "Romantic. Tasteful. Devastatingly expensive for a birthday party." A soft laugh. "I'll pay you back. You can't afford my genius." "I know." The quiet after that stretched strangely. Then Calvin added lower, "Whoever ends up in that room is going to feel really loved." I looked at the gold lights coiled across my table, the white roses ordered under his name. The playlist paused on our freshman year song. My throat went tight. "Yeah," I managed. "They better." Calvin exhaled, almost like he wanted to say more. Instead, he whispered, "Good night, Nico." After we hung up, I sat in the dark with the playlist glowing on my laptop. And for the first time, I wondered what kind of person could be loved by Calvin and still survive it. Then, because apparently sadness was not embarrassing enough on its own, anger showed up too. Not big anger. Not the dramatic, plate-smashing kind. Just a small, sharp thing under my ribs. I was mad that Calvin had kept this from me. Mad that he had made me useful instead of honest. Mad that I was spending my week making sure the love of his life felt cherished, while I had to learn from a secret birthday plan that there was a part of him I no longer got to reach. Then I hated myself for being mad. Because Calvin was allowed to love someone. He was allowed to have a future that did not ask my permission. I just wished my chest would stop acting like it had been evicted from that future without notice. By Saturday, Calvin decided we needed suits. Not wanted. Needed. Apparently a 30th birthday party with a secret proposal required proper tailoring, which was exactly the kind of phrase Calvin could say without sounding like a Victorian duke. I, however, heard it and immediately pictured myself being financially attacked by a mirror. "This is too much," I muttered as we stepped into a menswear boutique that smelled like cedar, leather, and men who owned investment portfolios. Calvin held the door for me, annoyingly calm. It's one suit. One suit is how they get you. First it's tailoring, then suddenly you're using words like pocket square. You already use pocket square. Only sarcastically. The salesman greeted Calvin like he belonged there and greeted me like I might touch something with jam hands. Fair. I did have a history. I sat on a velvet bench, pretending not to notice the price tags and failing with passion. Then the curtain opened, and I forgot how knees worked. Calvin stepped out in a black suit that fit him like it had signed a lease on his body. The jacket caught across his shoulders perfectly. The shirt was open at the throat, just enough to be offensive. His hair was pushed back from his forehead, and he looked less like my best friend and more like the man people ruin their lives over in expensive hotel bars. He glanced down at himself, then at me. Well, I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. A tragedy, honestly. I had spent 30 years developing opinions and abandoned all of them at the sight of one collarbone. Calvin's brow lifted, amusement starting at the corner of his mouth. That bad? No. I stood too fast, then pretended it was intentional. It's fine. Good. Very birthday. Very adult male with taxes. His laugh was quiet, warm, unfair. The salesman brought over a tie. Calvin took it, fumbled once, then looked at me. Can you? I should have said no, or thrown myself into a display of cufflinks. Instead, I stepped in front of him like a person with no survival instincts. His chin dipped so I could reach. My fingers slid under the collar, brushing warm skin by accident. Calvin went still. So did I. The store noise faded into soft fabric rustles and my own ridiculous heartbeat. I looped the tie, tightened it, adjusted the knot. Normal things. Friendly things. Things I had done before. Except this time his breath touched my wrist. This time his eyes stayed on my face. This time, the space between us felt less like habit and more like a question neither of us was brave enough to read out loud. Cleared my throat. You know, the person you're proposing to is going to be very impressed. Calvin's gaze didn't move. You think so? I mean, unless they're blind, or emotionally unavailable, or Canadian. His mouth twitched. Why Canadian? I panicked. That made him laugh, and the sound moved through me before I could defend myself. I patted his chest once, too quickly. Bad idea. Solid. Warm. Extremely not helpful. There. Perfect. I stepped back. Try not to weaponize it. Calvin looked at himself in the mirror, then at me through the reflection. Would you say yes? My stomach dropped. To the suit. His expression was unreadable. To the whole thing. For one dangerous second, I didn't know what answer belonged in my mouth. Then my phone buzzed, saving me from whatever disaster my heart had been preparing. It was Maya. Ask him who it is. Stop being a coward. I looked up. Calvin was still watching me in the mirror. And suddenly I was terrified he might actually answer. I did not ask him, obviously, because I was brave in theory, not in menswear boutiques where my best friend looked like a slow-motion bad decision. Instead, I shoved my phone into my pocket and made a very mature noise. We should get lunch. Calvin's eyes stayed on me for half a second too long. Then he smiled like he was letting me escape. Lunch sounds good. We met Maya and Derek at a taco place 2 blocks away. Because nothing says emotional stability like eating carnitas while your life quietly catches fire. Calvin went to take a call outside before the food arrived, leaving me trapped with 2 people who both had faces. Suspicious faces. Derek leaned across the table first. So, suit shopping. I dipped a chip into salsa with unnecessary focus. A normal activity performed by many adults. Maya sipped her margarita. Did he look hot? I choked. Derek nodded wisely. That means yes. He looked fine. I grabbed my water. Like a person wearing fabric. Sexy fabric? Derek, I will pay you to become silent. Maya's gaze flicked toward the window, where Calvin stood on the sidewalk, one hand in his pocket, phone against his ear. His shoulders filled out that new jacket in a way that should have required a city permit. I looked away before my eyes committed a felony. Maya lowered her voice. You know he's been planning this for a long time, right? My hand paused over the chips. What? Derek's smile vanished instantly, which was how I knew Maya had said something she maybe wasn't supposed to. She blinked. I mean, he's Calvin. He overthinks everything. No. My laugh came out thin. You said a long time. Maya and Derek exchanged a look. I hated looks. Looks were just conversations with worse lighting. How long? I pressed. Derek suddenly found the menu fascinating. These tacos have pineapple. Bold. Derek. Maya set down her glass, careful now. Too careful. Nico, I don't know details. Liar. I know he's been thinking about making a big move before 30. That's all. Before 30. The words landed heavy. Derek scratched the back of his neck, suddenly fascinated by his napkin. He almost said something once. Maya shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. My stomach tightened. Said something to who? Derek froze. Calvin was still outside, phone to his ear, smiling at the sidewalk like the world had not just tilted under my chair. Maya's voice dropped. Nico, don't do this to yourself. That is not an answer. Derek winced. I don't know names. I just know a few years ago he got drunk at my place, stared at his phone for 20 minutes, and said if he sent one text, he might lose the best thing in his life. My throat went dry. And you didn't ask who? He looked like he might cry, Derek muttered. I panicked and gave him chips. Calvin had been thinking about proposing to this person for a long time. Long enough that Maya knew. Long enough that Derek knew. Long enough that apparently everyone had been carrying around a secret while I sat there making playlists like an unpaid clown. My chest tightened, sharp and stupid. I looked back out the window. Calvin laughed softly at something on the phone, head tilted down, sunlight catching the side of his face. Whoever they were, they had done this to him. Made him plan. Made him nervous. Made him buy suits and talk about forever like it was finally within reach. I should have been happy. I was happy. Somewhere. The happy part of me was probably buried under jealousy, confusion, and 3 pounds of tortilla chips. Calvin returned before I could fix my face. You okay? His hand brushed the back of my chair as he sat down, casual and familiar. I smiled too fast. Great. Just learned Derek thinks pineapple belongs on tacos. It does, Derek defended. See? Crisis. Calvin watched me for a beat. He always noticed. That was the problem with being known too well. But he didn't push. Lunch moved on. People talked. I nodded in the right places. Laughed when required. Pretended the idea of Calvin loving someone for years wasn't quietly rearranging my internal organs. That night, alone in my apartment, I found the old photo by accident. Me and Calvin at 21, sitting on his dorm floor with cold pizza between us. My eyes were red from crying over Alicia. Calvin's hair was a disaster. Someone had drawn a mustache on his cheek with eyeliner. On the back, in Calvin's handwriting, were 4 words. 30 if we're lonely. I stared until the room went quiet around me. Then my phone buzzed. Calvin, can you help me write the proposal speech tomorrow? I stared at Calvin's text for a full minute. Then I did what any emotionally balanced adult would do. I threw my phone onto the couch like it had personally betrayed me. Help him write the proposal speech. Of course. Why stop at planning the flowers, the music, the lighting, the cake, and the emotional architecture of the night? Why not also handcraft the exact words Calvin would use to make someone else cry beautifully? I picked up the phone again. Me sure. Come over tomorrow. Then I sat down on the floor and reconsidered every life choice that had led me to being this loyal. Calvin arrived the next evening with takeout from our favorite Thai place and the black notebook tucked under one arm. He looked tired, but in that soft way he got when he was nervous and trying to pretend he wasn't. Payment. He held up the food bag. Pad CEW is not enough for emotional ghostwriting. I got spring rolls. I stepped aside. Accepted. He didn't move right away. For a second, Calvin just stood in my doorway, fingers tight around the paper bag, eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder. What? His jaw worked once. I almost canceled. My stomach dipped. The proposal? His laugh was quiet and humorless. Everything. That should have made me feel better. It did not. Why? Calvin looked at me then, and whatever joke I had ready died before it reached my mouth. Because if I get this wrong, I don't just lose a yes. I might lose the one friendship that taught me how to want forever in the first place. The hallway went too still. I forced myself to breathe. Well, I took the bag from his hand before mine could shake. Good thing you brought spring rolls. We ate at my kitchen table with the notebook between us like a tiny black bomb. For 20 minutes, we talked about everything except the speech. Work, Maya's margarita habit, Derek's pineapple taco crimes, Calvin's upcoming birthday, my neighbor's dog, who had recently learned how to scream. Then silence settled. Calvin pushed his food around with his fork. I uncapped a pen because apparently I enjoyed pain with structure. Okay. I forced brightness into my voice. Let's make somebody marry you. His eyes lifted. The joke landed wrong. Or maybe too right. I looked down fast. What do you want to say? Calvin leaned back, thumb brushing his lower lip. Thinking. I hated how much I noticed. I don't know where to start. Start with why you love them. His gaze stayed on me. A full second. 2. Then he looked at the notebook. Because they make everything feel less impossible. My pen slowed. They don't fix things for me. They just sit beside me until I remember I can breathe. I wrote it down. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. Calvin's voice was quiet now, almost careful. They know when I'm quiet because I'm tired, not because I'm angry. A laugh escaped me, too small. That's specific. His mouth softened. They know specific things. I swallowed and kept writing. They've seen me at my worst, Calvin continued, eyes on his hands, and somehow never made me feel hard to love. Something inside my chest gave a small, embarrassing crack. I wanted to ask who. I wanted to demand a name. I wanted to know what kind of person got to be described like that by Calvin, with that look on his face, with that voice that made every ordinary word feel chosen. Instead, I asked, what else? Calvin breathed in. If the world fell apart, they're the first person I'd try to find. The pen stopped, because that one hit too close, too familiar, to us. I remembered storms in college, power outages, job rejections, breakups, my father's surgery, Calvin's panic attack in the grocery store cereal aisle. Every disaster had led us back to each other somehow. But that didn't mean anything. Best friends did that. Best friends stayed. Best friends were allowed to feel like home without being in love. Right? I forced the pen to move again. At the bottom of the page, without thinking, I wrote, "You feel like home." Calvin saw it. His face changed. Not much. Just a breath catching. A stillness around the eyes. Cleared my throat. Too much. He shook his head slowly, looking at the words like they hurt. No. His voice came rougher than before. That's exactly right. Later, after Calvin left, I sat alone at the kitchen table and read the speech from the beginning. Every line sounded like a door I was too scared to open. And at the very bottom, under "You feel like home," Calvin had added one sentence while I wasn't looking. I hope, when this is over, they finally understand what they mean to me. I stared at the line until my eyes burned. Whoever they were, Calvin loved them enough to be terrified. And somehow that hurt worse than not knowing their name. I stared at Calvin's sentence until the words stopped looking like English. I hope, when this is over, they finally understand what they mean to me. For one insane second, I let myself wonder what it would feel like to be loved like that. Then common sense arrived late, breathless, and carrying a fire extinguisher. Obviously, he meant the person he was proposing to. Obviously, Calvin had written that line for them, not me. That was how speeches worked. You wrote you because the person would be standing there, loved by him, getting a ring from him. Not because his emotionally unstable best friend was sitting alone at a kitchen table trying not to cry into cold noodles. I closed the notebook so hard the pen jumped. Great, I muttered to my empty apartment. Now I'm jealous of grammar. The next day passed in a blur of errands, confirmations, and one deeply hostile conversation with a balloon vendor who thought champagne gold and mustard yellow were the same color. By evening, my apartment looked like a wedding Pinterest board had exploded and lost custody of its children. There were boxes everywhere. Candles, place cards, spare lights, white ribbon, the ring box, wrapped in tissue, sitting on my counter like a tiny villain. Calvin arrived at 7 with pizza because he knew me better than my own survival instincts. You look exhausted. He stepped inside, taking in the disaster. I look powerful. You have tape stuck to your sleeve. That's where I keep it. His laugh was soft, and for a second, everything felt normal again. We sat on the floor because my couch was buried under flowers. Calvin ate 2 slices like a civilized person. I folded mine in half and burned my mouth because patience had never been one of my gifts. He reached over without thinking and brushed a smear of sauce from the corner of my mouth with his thumb. The room stopped. His hand lingered for half a breath. Then he pulled back, eyes dropping to his plate. Sorry. I forced a shrug, like my entire nervous system hadn't just walked into traffic. It's fine. I was saving that for later. That earned me a smile, but it didn't erase the strange quiet between us. After dinner, we checked the timeline one last time. Music at 8:15. Cake at 8:30. Speech at 8:40. Proposal right after. I kept my voice steady. Mostly. Calvin sat beside me, close enough that his knee brushed mine whenever he shifted. He smelled like soap, cedar, and the kind of comfort that made me want to be stupid. You're sure? I looked down at the notebook. About tomorrow? His fingers stilled on the edge of a ribbon spool. No. I blinked. That's reassuring. A tired smile crossed his face. I'm sure about what I feel. I'm not sure they'll say yes. Something pinched behind my ribs. They'd be an idiot not to. Calvin looked at me then. Really looked. Like he was trying to memorize my face before something changed. You don't know that. I know you. His eyes softened, and I hated how much I meant it. The silence that followed was too full, too warm, too close to something neither of us touched. Eventually, Calvin leaned back against the couch and closed his eyes. I'll just rest for a minute. Famous last words. 5 minutes later, he was asleep. Of course he was. Calvin had fallen asleep in my apartment 100 times before. On my couch at my table, once halfway through helping me assemble a bookshelf. This should not have felt different. But tomorrow, someone else might become the place he fell asleep. I stood there with a folded blanket in my hands, watching the gold light catch on his face. Don't leave me behind, I whispered, too quietly for anyone but myself. Calvin stirred. My heart nearly punched through my ribs. His eyes opened just a little, unfocused and warm. Nico, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. I just want to get this right. Then he drifted off again, leaving me frozen in the middle of my living room with the blanket still in my hands. And for the first time, I wondered why his happiness felt so much like something I was about to lose. By the next evening, I had become the most emotionally unstable event planner in New York City. Everything was ready. The flowers arrived soft and white. The lights glowed warm instead of aggressive. The strawberry cake sat on the dessert table like a threat with frosting. The playlist was cued. The ring box was in Calvin's jacket pocket, because I had handed it to him myself like an idiot assisting in his own heartbreak. Maya found me adjusting the same ribbon for the 3rd time. Nico. What? That bow has done nothing to you. It knows what it did. Her eyes softened. You okay? I looked across the room. Calvin had just walked in. The suit fit even better than it had in the store, which felt personal. His hair was neat, his smile polite for the guests. But when his eyes found mine, something in his face loosened. Like relief. Like I was the person he had been looking for. I hated how much I wanted that to mean something. "I'm fine," I told Maya, which was brave because lies are exhausting. She squeezed my arm. "Sure." The party moved exactly how I planned it. People hugged Calvin. Someone made a joke about 30 being the age your knees started filing complaints. Derek gave a toast that was only 50% embarrassing, which was personal growth. Calvin laughed in all the right places. I stood beside him through most of it because that was where I had always stood. At his side. Not in front. Not behind. Just there. When the cake came out, everyone sang. Calvin closed his eyes before blowing out the candles, and for one foolish second, I wondered what he wished for. Then he opened his eyes and looked straight at me. My stomach folded in half. "No, absolutely not. Stop that." After cake, Maya dimmed the lights. The room softened into gold. The first notes of our freshman year song slipped through the speakers, low and familiar. My chest hurt instantly. Calvin's hand brushed mine as he passed me. "You ready?" His voice was quiet. I forced a smile. "You're the one proposing." His gaze lingered. "Yeah." That was all. One word. Too much weight. He stepped toward the front of the room, and everyone quieted. I moved to the side, exactly where I was supposed to be. Support character. Best friend. Man with backup tissues. Calvin took the microphone. "I wasn't sure I'd make a big deal out of 30, he began, thumb rubbing once over the mic handle. "I thought maybe I'd just have dinner, pretend I'm not scared of lower back pain, and let Nico make fun of me for ordering black coffee like a divorce detective." People laughed. I did too, automatically. Calvin smiled toward me, then looked back at the room. But turning 30 made me think about time. About who stays. About the people who see every version of you and somehow don't run. My smile started to fade. "I've been lucky," he continued, voice steadier now. "I've loved good people. I've been loved by good people. But there's one person who has been there through all of it. Through college, breakups, bad jobs, worse haircuts, family scares, stupid fights, quiet mornings, and nights when I didn't know how to be okay." The room had gone very still. I glanced around, searching for the mystery person. No one stepped forward. No one blushed. No one looked surprised. Actually, everyone was looking at me. Maya had both hands over her mouth. Derek looked like a man trying very hard not to clap too early. Even the bartender had stopped pouring champagne. Heat crawled up my neck. Why was everyone looking at me? Calvin lowered the microphone. Then he stepped off the little platform and started walking. Toward me. My pulse stumbled. I gave a tiny laugh, barely sound. "Cal?" He kept coming. "Calvin." He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could see the shine in his eyes. My voice dropped to a whisper. "You're going the wrong way." Calvin's smile trembled. "No, Nico." His hand slipped into his jacket pocket. I finally stopped doing that. And then, in front of everyone, Calvin dropped to one knee. Calvin dropped to one knee, and my entire life became a buffering screen. The room disappeared first. Not all at once. More like the edges softened until there was only Calvin, the tiny velvet box in his hand, and my heartbeat making a violent attempt to leave my body. Someone gasped. I think it was me. Calvin opened the box. The ring caught the gold light, simple and beautiful and absolutely not ugly. I hated that I had helped choose it. I hated that my first thought was, good 21-year-old me would approve. "Nico." Calvin's voice shook once, then steadied. "I know this is a lot." A laugh broke out of me, half panic, half sob. "You think." His smile flickered, tender and terrified. "I know you thought you were helping me propose to someone else." His eyes dropped for a second, guilt flickering across his face. "And I know asking you to help plan it was unfair. I kept telling myself I wanted it to be full of things you loved, because I wanted tonight to feel like you. But the truth is, I was scared. If I planned it alone, I knew I'd either give myself away or lose the nerve completely. I was very good at it, I managed, because apparently my survival instinct was comedy. You were perfect at it. That hit harder than it should have. Calvin looked down for a second, thumb brushing the ring box, then back up at me. His eyes were wet now. Calvin Pierce, who handled chaos like a professional and once calmly changed a tire in a thunderstorm, was kneeling in front of me like loving me had finally made him human. I've loved you for a long time, he began. Longer than I knew what to call it. First, I thought it was just us. Just how we were. Best friends. Family. The person I wanted to tell everything to. My throat closed. But then people came and went, and every time something good happened, I wanted to call you first. Every time something hurt, I wanted to find you first. Every version of my future that made sense had you in it. The room was too quiet. Or maybe I had stopped hearing anything except him. Calvin breathed out slowly. I was scared. I thought if I told you, I'd lose the safest place I had. So I dated other people. I tried to be normal about you. His mouth curved weakly. I was terrible at it. A soft laugh moved through the guests, warm and careful. Couldn't laugh. Because every sentence was unlocking something I had shoved behind the word friendship for 12 years. The coffee shop, the dorm floor, the cold pizza, the sweatshirt in my closet. The way his voice had always been the first place my panic went to calm down. Calvin lifted the ring a little, but not toward me. Not yet. You once joked that if we hit 30 unmarried, we should marry each other. I know you were trying to make me laugh. But I went home that night and thought. His eyes held mine. What if that's the first thing anyone has ever said that felt like a promise? My face crumpled before I could stop it. Nico, you don't have to say yes because people are watching. You don't have to say yes tonight. You can panic, yell at me, make a spreadsheet of reasons this is insane. I would make a very good spreadsheet. I know. His smile shook. And I would read every line. That broke me. Because this was Calvin. Still Calvin. Giving me an exit even while offering me forever. I looked around at the room I had built. The white flowers I chose because they felt calm. The gold lights I chose because they felt safe. The song from freshman year. The strawberry cake. The speech I helped write. All of it had been mine. All of it had been us. And somehow, I had missed the point completely. I looked back at him, tears blurring his face. I planned my own proposal, I whispered. Calvin's laugh broke on the way out. Technically. For a second, I wanted to laugh too. Then I wanted to hit him with the bouquet. Then I wanted to cry so hard I embarrassed both of us. Because suddenly every late night, every checklist, every stupid ribbon I tied, every song I chose while pretending not to ache, had a new shape. I hadn't been helping Calvin give himself to someone else. I had been building the room where he was finally brave enough to hand me his heart. And that made me furious, and grateful, and terrified, all at once. That was unfair, I said, voice shaking. Calvin's face crumpled. I know. No, I mean really unfair. My laugh came out wet. You made me choose the flowers. I'm sorry. And the cake. I'm sorry. And the ring, Calvin. His eyes dropped. I know. I looked at the ring, then at him. You let me make sure I'd love it. A tear slipped down his cheek. I wanted one thing about tonight to be easy for you, he whispered. Even if I made everything else too hard. That broke something open in me. Not cleanly, not neatly, but enough. Because I was angry, yes, embarrassed, overwhelmed, absolutely going to bring this up in future arguments. But beneath all of that was the truth I had been running from for weeks. I didn't want Calvin to belong to someone else. I wanted him to come home to me. My hand trembled as I held it out. Calvin stopped breathing. For once, I knew exactly what I wanted. Yes, I said before fear could edit me. Yes, Calvin. Of course I'm saying yes. The sound that left him was almost a laugh, almost a sob. He slid the ring onto my finger with hands that shook worse than mine. It fit. Of course it fit. The room erupted, but I barely heard it because Calvin stood and I grabbed his face before either of us could overthink. Our first kiss tasted like tears, laughter, and 12 years of almost. When we finally broke the kiss, Calvin stayed close, his breath trembling against my mouth. "You're sure?" His voice was barely there. I looked at the ring on my hand, then at him. "I'm sure I'm terrified." His fingers tightened around mine. "And I'm sure I don't want to run." That night, after the congratulations, the photos, and the cake I suddenly had very strong legal feelings about, Calvin followed me back to my apartment. And for the first time in 12 years, closing the door behind us felt like opening something else. The second my apartment door clicked shut, both of us forgot how to be normal, which was impressive, considering we had been abnormal together for 12 years. Calvin stood by the entryway, one hand still around mine, his thumb brushing the ring like he needed proof it was real. His jacket was wrinkled from all the hugging. His tie sat crooked. His eyes kept moving over my face with this quiet, stunned happiness that made my chest feel too small. I lifted my hand between us. "So," he looked at the ring, then at me. "So, we're engaged. We are. To each other. That is usually the idea." I nodded slowly. "Cool. Great. Very chill development for a Thursday. It's Saturday. Time is fake." Calvin laughed, and the sound loosened something in me. Not all of it. There was still a nervous, glowing thing under my skin, running around with a tiny clipboard screaming, "You kissed your best friend in front of 40 people." I stepped farther into the apartment, then turned back too fast. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." His smile softened. "Nico." "No, I mean it. We've done everything backward. We've seen each other with food poisoning. You know what I look like when I ugly cry. I own 3 of your hoodies and possibly 1 pair of your socks. But now I'm supposed to be your fiancé, and I don't know where the friendship ends and the other thing starts." Calvin moved closer, slow enough that I could step away. I didn't. "Maybe it doesn't end." His fingers found mine again. "Maybe it just gets another name." I looked down at our hands. "That sounds beautiful, which makes me suspicious. It can be beautiful and still need work." That made me look up. Calvin's smile was soft, but serious now. "I'm not asking us to pretend everything changed perfectly overnight. We can be awkward. We can talk too much. We can slow down whenever you need to." My throat tightened. "You're being very emotionally healthy right now, and I don't appreciate being attracted to it." That was unfairly beautiful, so naturally I had to ruin it. "Did you rehearse that?" "Only for 12 years. My laugh came out shaky. Calvin's gaze dropped to my mouth. The apartment went quiet. Not empty quiet, full quiet. The kind that presses against your ribs and waits. I reached for his tie because apparently that was my emotional support fabric now. The knot was crooked from the party. From me grabbing his face. From the kiss everyone cheered for while I mentally left my body. I loosened it carefully. Calvin's breath changed. "Is this okay?" My voice barely made it out. His hand rose, stopping just shy of my waist. Asking without touching. "Yes. Is this?" I nodded. His palm settled against me, warm through my shirt, and the simplicity of it almost broke me. Not rushed, not claiming, just there. I pulled him down. The kiss started soft, almost cautious, like we were both afraid of damaging something precious. Then Calvin made a small sound against my mouth, and my knees remembered they had betrayed me earlier and considered doing it again. His hand slid to my back. Mine curled into his shirt. Familiar body. New meaning. That was the dangerous part. Calvin already knew how to hold me. He knew I liked pressure between my shoulder blades when I was overwhelmed. He knew I laughed when nervous. He knew I needed space and closeness at the exact same impossible time. He kissed me like he knew all of that too. When we finally pulled apart, Calvin stayed right there, close enough that the whole room still felt like it belonged to us. "You still with me?" I smiled against his mouth. Unfortunately, yes, very present, horribly aware. His laugh brushed my lips. We made it to the couch somehow. The same couch where he had slept the night before, where I had stood with a blanket and whispered something I hoped he hadn't heard. Now his jacket was over the armrest. My fingers were in his hair. His hands stayed careful, checking in with every pause, every breath, every look. There was heat, yes, but more than that, there was relief. Like we had been standing outside the same door for years, pretending we didn't have keys. At some point, Calvin touched the ring again. I covered his hand with mine. "I'm scared," I admitted. His eyes searched my face. "Of me. Of losing us." Calvin kissed my knuckles, slow and steady. "You won't. You can't promise that." "No." His mouth brushed the ring on my finger. "But I can promise I'll choose us every day I'm allowed to." That was the moment I stopped trying to understand everything. Kissed him again. Later, when the lights were low and the city had gone quiet outside my windows, I woke with Calvin's arm around me and my cheek against his chest. The ring rested between us, catching a thin line of moonlight. For the first time all week, nothing in me ached. Then Calvin stirred, voice rough with sleep. "We should talk about the wedding." My eyes opened. "The what?" His arm tightened gently around me. "Not tomorrow. Not next week. I'm not trying to drag you from panic kissing me straight into a courthouse. That is suspiciously reasonable. I'm serious." His mouth brushed my temple. "Small. People who already know we're idiots. The coffee shop, maybe, but only when you're ready." I turned my head just enough to look at him. "You have thought about this." "For 12 years, Nico." His smile touched my skin. "But I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just done pretending I don't know what I want." I looked at the ring between us, then at his hand over mine. "Give me a little time to catch up." His fingers tightened gently. "You can have all the time you need." I believed him, which was new and terrifying, and maybe the safest thing I had ever felt. 3 months later, I married my best friend in the coffee shop where he ruined my life. Fine. Technically, he improved it. And before anyone judges the timeline, yes, 3 months was still fast. But we had already spent 12 years learning each other's worst habits, coffee orders, family drama, and emotional escape routes. The 3 months after the proposal were not about falling in love. That part apparently had happened while I was busy being an idiot. Those 3 months were about learning how to hold it without flinching. We went on actual dates, which was deeply humiliating because Calvin already knew I picked the onions out of everything and still ordered them like an optimist. We had 1 awkward conversation about labels, 2 about sex, 3 about money, and approximately 17 about whether we were moving too fast or just finally catching up. Every time I panicked, Calvin slowed down. Every time he got too quiet, I reached for his hand. By the time we asked the cafe owner if we could get married there, she cried harder than my mother and gave us a discount because, apparently, 12 years of eye contact over lattes counted as a love story. But ruined sounded more dramatic, and I was wearing a suit before noon, so I deserved language privileges. The owner closed the cafe for us that Saturday. Same corner booth by the window, same wobbly table, same smell of espresso and cinnamon muffins. Only now there were white flowers on every table, gold lights above the counter, and a strawberry cake sitting near the register like a smug little witness. Maya adjusted my boutonniere for the 3rd time. "Stop moving." "I'm not moving. I'm vibrating with legal romance." "You're sweating through designer fabric." "Love is disgusting." She smiled, but her eyes were wet. "You look happy." I glanced across the room. Calvin stood near the old chalkboard menu, laughing softly at something Derek said. His suit was dark blue this time. No tie, open collar. 1 hand in his pocket. The other kept touching the box with our wedding bands like he was afraid it might vanish. Then he looked at me. The whole cafe disappeared for half a second. I admitted. Maya squeezed my shoulder and walked away before I could make a joke big enough to hide behind. The ceremony was small. Family, friends, people who had apparently known Calvin loved me before I knew Calvin loved me, which was rude and, frankly, poor group communication. The marriage license had been easier than the seating chart, which felt legally suspicious. Apparently the state was fine with us becoming husbands, but Aunt Linda and Derek could not be trusted at the same table. When it was time for vows, Calvin went first. He took my hands, thumbs brushing over my knuckles, steadying me the way he always had. I used to think loving you was the dangerous part. His voice was calm, but his eyes were shining. I was wrong. The dangerous part was pretending I didn't. You have been my best friend, my emergency contact, my safe place, and the person who makes even the worst days feel survivable. My throat tightened immediately. Unfair. Illegal. Too many feelings before lunch. Calvin smiled like he could hear my thoughts. I don't want to replace what we were, Nico. I want to protect it. I want to wake up beside you, argue about coffee with you, steal fries from you, grow older with you, and spend the rest of my life proving that choosing you wasn't a moment. It's what I've been doing all along. By the time he finished, I was a public safety hazard. Then it was my turn. I unfolded my paper, saw my own handwriting shake, and laughed under my breath. I had a speech, I started. It was organized, funny, emotionally responsible. Derek whispered, "Unlikely." I pointed at him without looking. "You are not part of my vows." The room laughed, and the tightness in my chest eased. I looked at Calvin, really looked, at the boy from the dorm floor, the man from the coffee shop, the friend who stayed, the fiancé who waited, the husband who was about to become mine in front of everybody we loved. "I spent 12 years thinking I knew exactly what you were to me," I continued. "My best friend, my person, my home. I thought love had to arrive loudly, dramatically, with fireworks, panic, and at least one terrible decision made in the rain." Calvin's mouth curved. "But you were there in all the quiet places. You were the call after bad news, the laugh after awful dates, the hand on my back when I forgot how to breathe. I was scared that loving you would make me lose my best friend." I squeezed his hands. But it didn't. It just gave me another word for him. My voice cracked. "My husband." Calvin blinked fast, and I loved him so much it almost hurt. The rings went on. The cafe erupted. Calvin kissed me before the officiant finished the sentence, which earned a scandalized gasp from my aunt and applause from everyone with taste. Afterward, we cut the strawberry cake. Calvin leaned close, frosting on his thumb. "Any regrets?" I looked at our friends, the gold lights, the booth where this had started, and the man who had loved me patiently enough to let me find my own way there. "One." His smile faltered. I kissed him before he could panic. "I regret laughing it off when we were 21. Calvin laughed against my mouth, warm and relieved. "Then we'll make up for lost time." So we did. Not perfectly, not magically, but honestly, hand in hand, ring to ring, coffee growing cold on the table beside us. I married my best friend at 30, and somehow it still felt like we were right on time.